Did you see the insane footage of Hamas staging a hostage retrieval, trying to fool us into thinking they don't know where the hostages are? And did you hear the insane news that they gave us back parts of the remains of a hostage that we had already? Parts. Let that sink in. And then they shot at IDF soldiers. A father of 5 was murdered. And they still have 13 hostages, despite Trump's clear ultimatum already 3 days ago. And obviously, the world is claiming that Israel broke the ceasefire, which is just so ridiculous, as Hamas are mocking us publicly, breaking every single part of this deal, and they cannot get away with it under any circumstances. Enough is enough. Israel has finally announced some sort of retaliation, which is set to soon pause for all that they are doing, and will now also start to expand our buffer zone a little bit. Is this the end of the Trump's peace plan? What is going on? Why are Hamas doing this? This is the Meir K Show on JNS TV. Let's talk about it. So first, did you see the video? Before we watch it, here's the context, because this video will blow you away. On October 13th, the 20 living hostages came back to us in a total miracle, and 4 deceased hostages were returned as well. And whilst that sounds amazing, that wasn't the deal. The remaining 24 bodies that were supposed to be given back within the same 72 hours, to our shock and dismay and surprise, Hamas decided to just not give them back. And that's when the game started, because obviously Hamas have to play games. They understood and understand that the living hostages were creating enormous amounts of pressure on them from the West and the Gulf states, and that they really wouldn't get away with playing at all with the returning of them. However, they recognize that for Jews, the murdered hostages also hold profound significance. Not necessarily the same urgency as the living ones, who we were afraid were going to be murdered, but the religious importance of ensuring their proper burial cannot be underestimated. To us, all of the hostages needed to be returned. But what they also know is that the world doesn't feel that way, that the urgency for that is less. And Hamas being Hamas and thinking in terms of manipulation took a bet that they would be able to get away with playing games with the bodies, because the pressure would then move from Hamas returning the hostages to Israel not potentially sabotaging the deal that's on the table. And they were right when Israel said enough is enough. Okay, because these games were getting ridiculous after days and days and days of them dragging it out and returning a Palestinian to us instead of a hostage who actually turned out to be a spy for Israel. The US stopped us from retaliating. Now, it's not to say that the US is not on Israel's side. They are. We'll get to that in a second. But this peace deal is just way, way too tempting. And Hamas know it, despite the fact that they have zero intentions of keeping any of the terms of the so-called agreement. They keep seeing how far they can push the line. Suddenly, they have these excuses. We can't locate the bodies. It's going to take more time. Not that a Hamas operative sounds like that, but it may potentially be true. It may be hard for them to find some bodies in the rubble. But all the while, they're executing Palestinians and regrouping as a terror group. They're no longer the military force that they were. Yes, that was a massive, significant win on Israel's behalf. They're now this smaller guerrilla group. But they have thousands of newly released terrorists in their midst, and they're actively recruiting for more. And so Israel made it clear to the US that we are not moving forward in any way until all of the bodies are returned. And because of this, teams were sent by Egypt and other groups to try and help locate the bodies. Equipment for excavation came from Qatar. It's a whole big hullabaloo, and Hamas are obviously using this to make a whole big scene. But behind this whole facade, Hamas are enjoying themselves immensely. According to Israeli officials, they know exactly where at least 8 more bodies are. But they just keep on going with the lies that they can't find them. Finally, after 6 days of them doing nothing except for promising that they'll give us some bodies today or tomorrow and then negating on that promise, Trump issued a serious ultimatum. Here's exactly what he wrote. We have a very strong peace in the Middle East, and I believe it has a good chance of being everlasting. Hamas is going to have to start returning the bodies of the deceased hostages, including 2 Americans, quickly, or the other countries involved in this great peace will take action. Some of the bodies are hard to reach, but others they can return now, and for some reason, they are not. Perhaps it has to do with their disarming. But when I said both sides would be treated fairly, that only applies if they comply with their obligations. Let's see how they do over the next 48 hours. I am watching this very, very closely. And in response, Hamas announces that a body is returning because obviously they don't like Trump ultimatums. Only Once the body's returned, we discovered that it's not one of the 13 hostages. It's parts of a hostage that has already been returned and buried. Parts. Don't let your imagination run too wild, but let this give you the conviction and remind you that we just don't hate these people enough. Israel is frantically trying to figure out how to retaliate, right? Because you can't get away with that. Giving us parts of a hostage that you've already returned that we buried? What are you talking about? Netanyahu is even allowed to leave his trial for an emergency meeting. Yes, he's still having this ridiculous trial, but pressure is mounting for it to be cancelled, not just in light of Herzog being called out by Trump. Absolute legendary move, by the way, because a president has the ability to pardon even a prime minister, but now by members of Knesset who are trying to put forward a bill. The people of Israel do not need their prime minister during a war sitting on trial for cigars from 20 years ago. But back to our topic. As the politicians convene and put together a game plan to respond to Hamas blatantly breaking all of the rules, which coincides with Trump's 48-hour deadline ending, that's already been almost 48 hours since, three things happen. So Trump announces that they have 48 hours, and then they send us back a body, which is not really a body. And then this video gets released that we're about to watch. Hamas announces that they're returning another hostage. Okay. And Hamas snipers fire at an IDF soldier, killing a father of 5. And we will discuss what all of that means by the video. So as you can see, Hamas bring a body, drop it from a building, which means they know where this body is, right? They then cover it in rubble using the equipment that's been provided to them in helps of finding the hostages, and then they call the Red Cross to show them that they have found it. And all of this, by the way, was filmed accidentally by an IDF drone. By the way, this is the Red Cross's ridiculous and disgusting response. It is unacceptable to stage a fake rescue when so much depends on the implementation of this agreement. Oh, really, Red Cross? It's not okay? I mean, what about Hamas has been okay? And where have your statements been up until this point? Anyway, the Red Cross can get me so mad. I don't want to talk about that right now. But let's talk about what Hamas are doing. The disgrace, the mockery, the lies of them literally pretending that they have no idea where the bodies are, then bringing out the bodies, hiding them to make this whole game, this whole facade. Putting aside the fact that suddenly the Red Cross can now communicate with Hamas after failing to do so for the last 2 years, we now have the concrete proof that Hamas do have the bodies and they're just lying about it for propaganda. What's new? The only thing they have ever said that I tend to believe is that they don't plan on stopping until they take over all of Israel. That, of course, will, ironically, end up being not true, because that's never going to happen. But I believe them when they say it's their intention. It's the only thing I believe. Everything else is pure manipulation, as stipulated in their religion that they're allowed to do in the name of Islam. So everyone in Israel sees this video, okay? Just imagine. And then, right as we see this, we hear that Hamas, or another terror group, because Hamas are pretending that they had nothing to do it, have taken it a step further and have shot at the IDF soldiers. Another blatant rule break. And why do they do this? Because they realize that they can literally push as far as they want in breaking this ceasefire, and nobody's going to stop them. Israel's hands are being tied by America. The world is blaming Israel for breaking the ceasefire because we decided to go in and eliminate some terrorists in Gaza. And then, after they do this, okay, they return the body. It's not really a body. They make a video. Well, they don't make a video. They get caught on camera hiding a hostage body that they clearly have and pretending that they don't. They then shoot at IDF soldiers. Just think about the rules. They then, just for fun, announce that a hostage is going to be returning the night the video was released. Probably because they're hoping that it's going to delay a retaliation on our behalf. If a hostage is coming home, maybe we'll wait. Anyway, it doesn't work. Israel decides enough is enough. We're going in. And our defense minister, Israel Katz, says this. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. The terrorist organization Hamas will pay a heavy price for attacking IDF soldiers in Gaza and for violating the agreement to return the fallen hostages. Duh. Today's attack on IDF soldiers in Gaza by the terrorist organization Hamas is a blatant crossing of a red line that the IDF will respond to with great force. Protecting the safety and security of IDF soldiers is the highest priority mission in the IDF's operation in Gaza. Hamas will pay back with compounding interest for attacking the soldiers and for violating the agreement to return the fallen hostages. Amen. About time. But as of this morning, we hear that by 10 a.m., they're planning on stopping the attacks. Okay? America understands that enough is enough, right? So we hear statements from JD Vance and Trump who are just like, look, we think the ceasefire is going to hold, but yes, Israel should retaliate and can retaliate on this. Israel just can't take this standing. Hamas just blatantly disregarding all the rules. By the way, after all this happens, Hamas then has the chutzpah to say that because we broke the ceasefire deal, propaganda they know that the world will run with because they just love blaming Israel for everything, they've decided that they're not going to return the hostage. Probably hoping to get the hostage protesters back in the street because, as we know, Israel also has its own useful idiots. Hopefully, our useful idiots don't fall for it this time because we know Hamas weren't actually ever planning on giving that body back. They've made many such announcements over the last few weeks, and surprise, surprise, they didn't actually return those bodies. So now that's where we stand. Israel, by the way, and this is important, has also announced that it intends to expand the yellow zone. Okay, this is a belt along Gaza's northern, southern, and eastern edges inside the territory, which amounts to about 53%. And Israel said, okay, we're just going to grow that buffer zone a little bit as a ramification to Hamas, who cannot handle the idea of us having control over more of Gaza. Remember, all of this is a religious battle. What they want is control of the land of Israel as much as they possibly can. And every time that we move forward in taking over more of their land, they don't love that. But I think this brings us to the question of whether this peace plan, okay, the next step, will ever come to be. Remember, we haven't even started it yet. The first term is that all hostages come home. The second is that Hamas disarm, and then we can move forward into that. Hamas are not planning on disarming, but we'll get to that. I've been asked a lot what I personally think about this deal. And the truth is, I kind of think at this point it's irrelevant. If you really want to know, I think it's disgusting that we are going back to the old ways of releasing terrorists in exchange for peace, and that we are being bullied out of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria in hopes of relations with the Gulf states. Without getting into this too much, when JD Vance was here last week, stupidly, a resolution was pushed to recognize Judea and Samaria, to which Vance took personal offense and made it clear that the U.S. will not allow for the annexation of the heart of our country, despite this being something that we know that Trump has probably committed to behind the scenes. It's a mess now because we need sovereignty, and America recognizes this, but we also need the U.S. relations and the potential future deals with Saudi Arabia, and all of it's getting very, very mixed up. And now it's much, much more complicated because it's become an antagonizing move instead of just something obvious for us to do. Like, this is our land, so we should have sovereignty over all of it. But we'll leave that for another time. So whilst I think the terms and conditions of this deal are a total mistake, totally mistake, I think the conversation is actually irrelevant for now because it's going to be ages till anything, if it ever happens, moves forward. We need patience at this point. The war is nowhere near over. It's going to take time to continue to dismantle Hamas and even to get the rest of the bodies back. I know we all want answers today, but I think it's probably going to be months, unfortunately. Trump has proven to have a very, very solid understanding of the advanced Middle Eastern countries. He gets the power and the money and the respect in the Saudi Arabia Qatar thing. But I don't think the West has succeeded in really understanding the jihadi mentality part of the Middle East yet. I haven't seen them truly grasp how we deal with Hamas. And I really hope that this middleman role that Israel plays, trying to keep terror at bay and at the same time keep US's hopes of a future peace alive, doesn't end up costing us. I say it often. I really love our relationship with the United States, but I hate the dependency on them. And the fact that it often comes at the cost of us needing to do what's right for our country is unbelievably problematic. Israel often acts as a translator to the West on issues of the Middle East, and I get it. We can't help but fall for the fallacy of peace. It is so unbelievably tempting to think that we'll just have calm borders and no terror attacks. But at the root of all this, it's kind of impossible. As long as our enemy is being fed, and fed it is, with money and power and recognition, but most importantly by ideology, we have not figured out how to de-radicalize their hate, and I don't think we're ever going to. And if we can't convince them to change, the simple fact is that we need to force them. And forceful strength doesn't always feel the same as peace. The US wants us to keep the ceasefire in place, and I get it, but also let's just be realistic at this point. Anything but strength is unacceptable. Hamas are never, ever, ever, ever going to actually disarm. Even if they put up some show and pretend that they do, they're not really going to. The problem with all of this is that I don't actually have a simple solution to present today. A part of me says to just accept that we can't have everything and push for going all out on Gaza right now, even if the US get mad. There is a lot of space for that argument. But I also see the merit in us delaying the final hammer blow till we have at least a few more bodies back. even if it makes us look a bit weak in the eyes of Hamas. Each body is a whole life, a whole family, and maybe even trying to see if we can move towards the peace plan. Maybe I'm wrong about it not being possible. I totally did not think that live hostages would come home, and I've never been happier to be wrong in my life. And trust me, I will be very happy to admit if we actually do ever get peace with Gaza. All in all, we are navigating a very complex US relations. They are strong, strong allies who really, really want this peace plan despite the obvious glaring hole in it, which is that the Palestinians don't want it. And we are navigating keeping terror at bay and needing all of the hostages' homes. These all demand different things and are often just not really aligned. What I would love to see is another beeper or Iran maneuvering up our sleeves, and we are just waiting with patience to execute it. I wouldn't put it past us. Bibi is always playing two games of chess, the internal Israeli politics and the bigger geopolitical game. And as often with a game of chess, waiting for the exact moment is key to the checkmate. And that's where we're kind of at right now. How do we present strength? How do we actually get to peace? And is that even possible? Only time will tell. Let's end the episode with a prayer. And no, not as a cliche, but I think it's really important that we recognize that at the basis of all this is a religious war. We need to pray that our leadership have the insight and wisdom to bring home the win and the safety that is needed for all of us. And that the journey should be safe and smooth till we reach the day where our enemies no longer have any more power. Amen. I'm Ira, and I will see you next time.